All right, let's get started. When Chris first approached me and asked if we could have a robot present at B-Sides, I'm like, heck yes! What an amazing opportunity. And Chris is well known in the security community, and I'm sure there's lots of Alberta Treasury Branch customers in the room with us today. So security and innovation, and I'm sure we all fight the battle of how do we innovate and drive business and keep the organization secure. So welcome to Chris and Pepper. Thank you.
Interrupting me constantly. Yeah, so I had to thank Neho for challenging me to bring a robot to B-Sides this year, and actually I'm thrilled that I actually got chosen to be able to do it and everything else. So I decided to give a little bit of a talk on security and innovation. And the reason I brought Pepper was because obviously it's a very innovative product, but it actually made a really good basis for a talk. Everyone's talking about things like IoT and Internet of Dongs and, well, just about everything else in this. But Pepper presents an interesting challenge because she's basically all of them rolled into one. And I'll go through that in a little bit. So just a little bit more about me. There it is. Hate PowerPoint. So yeah, I'm currently employed as a security architect at ATB Financial. I've been there for 10 years with a number of different roles, everything from an analyst all the way up to a director. Speaking at multiple conferences, I've been referenced, I've made a magazine once. And according to my loving wife, my basement pretty much looks like NASA. And when I get to bring the robot home, my kids love it. So a little bit about ATB Financial. So ATB was established 77 years ago by the government of Alberta, basically to help the farmers and stuff through the Great Depression. Interesting on that one is the fact that we're a financial institution and a crown corporation. So if you actually own an Alberta driver's license, you're actually a shareholder of ATB Financial if you didn't know. It does have some perks. One of the perks is the fact that we actually can do things that other banks can't do. We can actually do crowdfunding lending because we can actually have the government back the loans. So interesting little thing. But we've, at ATB Financial, have done a lot of innovative stuff over the years. We're actually the first financial institution to ever have a mobile branch. We actually introduced telephone banking in Canada. We were the first organization to ever migrate our banking system from mainframe to SAP. The list goes on and on. Of course, we got robotics and international blockchain payments, and we've actually been doing money movement via chatbots over Facebook Messenger, Google Home, and Alexa. This one hasn't been announced in the paper yet, so you're hearing it first. What does all that mean for us? You know, we're security people. We're seeing a lot of really crazy things. Well, most of the time it means this. The people walking around with the "you make me drink because you don't change your passwords," I love that one, by the way. Here's the big problem that we have. We got buzzwords. We got transformation, innovation, disruption, growth hacking. I actually have somebody who actually has a job title of a growth hacker, and I'm like, I couldn't get hacker in my title. How can you? Agile. Oh, I hate that word. But what it basically means is consumers and organizations, everything else, we're moving faster and faster. Technology is moving at a rate that is surpassing. It's like Moore's law of doubling the hardware and stuff every year. Well, now technology is doing that. So we've got IoT, DevOps, APIs, niche markets, consumer devices, and consumer devices are actually making their way into the enterprise. And that's starting to cause more problems because the enterprise perimeter boundary used to be this nice little data center with firewalls and big walls and doors and biometric locks, and that was great. Well, now everyone's network extends, everywhere. You've got laptops with VPN and mobile phones and connected and SCADA devices all over the place. So the problem is traditional security testing, We get a typical waterfall project. Okay, here we're going to do the testing. It starts in 2 months. We've got 3 months to be able to do it. Time goes on like that. Well, now we're doing proof of concepts and stuff in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We're putting stuff up and integrating it into our network, and we don't even know if it's actually going to work or not. I mean, the whole thing with innovation is it's okay to fail. So you have projects that are coming in, trying to integrate with your system, and then you make all these changes to accommodate it, then all of a sudden, okay, now we're done. We're not using it, now tear it out. Well, that's great, but what about the changes that you had to make to your organization to make it actually work the first time? So that presents a few small problems. The other thing is vulnerability management versus pen testing. I hear this one all the time. Vulnerability management, it's patching. That's all it is. It's making sure you've got a host inventory, making sure you've got a list of all your assets, you know what everything is running, but it's not pen testing. Pen testing is actually getting in and breaking the lock, or capturing the flag and doing all of that kind of stuff. And it's getting more complex with everything. But the good thing is the tools are getting better, because the security community as a whole is starting to share a lot of these tools. There's nothing I've had to test that I couldn't find a tool or somebody was looking at, or something I could modify, or something I could build, because the frameworks are getting better and better. So when we look at the complexity of the enterprise network, it's been evolving. Exactly what I was saying before. It used to be, little closed perimeter network, and now we're moving towards data, user-based identity instead of location-based protections, virtual things, cloud, wearable devices, ransomware. All of these things change the threats and the risks, but it's also changing the assets that we're trying to protect. Now, it's interesting when people think of IoT. I mean, most people, when they think IoT is, I've got a Chromecast and I've got an Ecobee thing at home, for my thermostat and everything else. And a lot of consumers have IoT and they don't even know it. Smart TVs, try and find a TV right now that doesn't have a web server built into it. It's actually not that easy. I've been looking. So if anybody actually knows of a good one, let me know. But it's interesting when you take a look at this, because the IoT actually has specific market segments now. So there's actually ones for cars and fleets, and wearables, and homes, infrastructure, healthcare, smart utilities. These are not even an exhaustive list. This is like the top 5. So when you look at the number of companies, realize that the number of devices that we're having is going to be exponential. Because, hey, if I can put an IP address on it, why not? The problem is, well, one day somebody's going to figure out, hey, why don't we make some money on this? So it's already happened with things like the Mirai botnets, and there's the new one called Reaper that just, if anybody's reading the paper lately, so they've discovered about 2 million devices that are all part of a botnet based a little on Mirai, but, sorry, just one second. It's all made up of IP cameras and DVRs and everything else, and it's all built in, and it's getting bigger and bigger because it's just using default usernames and passwords and exploit of the days, right? And they're building it, making it more, and it's just growing and growing and growing. And how many people probably are part of that botnet and have no idea? So that puts us into a bit of a challenge. So breaking down the challenges a bit more. Traditional security testing, it's not fast enough, right? When that was always a challenge that we had with the security team when I was on it too, is it takes time, right? And of course, projects want to go fast, projects want to keep it cheap. And when you come to them and say, yeah, we need a month for testing, they're like, well, the project's done in a month. So, hey, it's not an IT project. So why do we need security on that one? Taking a look at the complexity of testing, right? So you've got web, app, hardware. Most of these people are the cheapest Chinese firmware that you can find, and most of it's shared, and they just turn off portions of it for all the different devices, right? So you'll find this camera and this camera have the same one, different feature sets, same circuitry. And the worst thing I hate about all of it is the reporting. I don't know any of you, raise your hand if anybody actually likes writing their pen test reports. I didn't think so. Okay, so good news, might have some stuff on that one later coming on. So taking a look through some of the common embedded vulnerabilities. And this is not even near an exhaustive list. We've got physical issues, consoles, serials, JTAGs, all the protocols like Bluetooth and wireless. And you know, Kevin's talk this morning on BLE was fantastic. We've got a few other ones that we're going to be going through afterwards as well. But mobile applications, how do we actually take a look at all the issues that we typically have in there, because they're not doing certificate pinning, because they're not, you know, I've done tests on things where I've had developers embed their MailChimp master admin API key into it. Oh, great. Go in, hey, look, now I have their entire customer list. Let's send an email. Going through all the APIs, it's the same thing. An API is just a glorified web system for the LAC. So all of the different stuff and issues that happen to that happen there. But are they actually hardening their API? You know, if you have a search term capable in the API, can you put in a set of double quotes and dump their database? I've seen it. And of course, default passwords. Because how many people like updating their firmware? Good example for crack. How many people are sitting here going, hey, I wonder if my thermostat has a firmware update for it? It's vulnerable. I still haven't seen a patch yet. I've asked the vendor though. So what do? Test for risk. And I say testing for risk because you need to be able to identify quickly for a proof of concept or any kind of innovation project, what exactly are you trying to protect? So if we're taking a look at a robot, we're going to apply different levels of testing based on the kind of risk. Does she have any kind of customer information or personal identifiable? No. Okay. So if certain things happen, it's not the end of the world. But let's say all of a sudden we integrate a bunch of AI into her and people can speak their bank number and say, oh yeah, okay, maybe we should put a little more protection on some of that thing. So some of the things that we may let slide during a proof of concept would never fly in production. But it's that kind of testing that we'll go through and identify all of these kind of issues so that we can say, look, for a proof of concept, here it is, here's what we tested, here's all the issues, we're fine with it for now. But should you decide to go into production and integrate AI or anything else like that, here's a list of all the stuff and this is how much it's going to cost you. It also helps us go back to the vendors and say, here, you guys need to fix this. So I'm currently working on that with the vendor of the robot, SoftBank Robotics, listing out, here's my stuff. And one of the big issues that we had right off the bat was the fact, you may have noticed the little wireless modem back there, is she has no support for 802.1x. Well, for an environment that's, you know, hardened and working with NAC, that kind of screws everybody. So we had to come up with some little bit of workarounds. So when I'm testing, I typically go for these 6 key steps. Identify potential exploits and issues within the target platform. So that's your basic testing. What patch levels are there? You know, what level's the kernel? What security patches are on there? Can we dump the firmware? Can we look for those default passwords? Can we find undocumented features? More on that later. Take a look at the configuration. Are there any API calls? Are there, you know, is she making web calls that aren't protected by SSL? Are they using admin or API keys, and are they properly protected? Can you gain elevated rights on the platform? So of course, Pepper's actually pretty good because she actually she's locked down. There's no root account, it's disabled. Sudo's pretty well configured. Out of box, not too bad. And also, can you find a way to maintain remote persistence to the device? Can you make it part of a botnet, for example? So how do we do that? Well, easiest way, use the different methodologies. OAuth, DREAD, STRIDE, PTES, HRES, all a bunch of letters, but all they are different methodologies on ways of identifying the risk and then reporting on them. It's good because they also break down things to test and look for. So OWASP is great, for example. Little added data, I got to work on that one. But it goes through and says, here's a list of all the stuff that we'll typically do for web. Authentication issues, brute force capabilities, lockout procedures. You know, and you can just put that in. So I've actually built spreadsheets and stuff, and every time I do the testing, I can just go, yes, yes, no, 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 yes. Throw out a pivot table. Okay, here my report's done. Makes it very easy. When you're actually doing the testing, not sure how many people have actually done like hardware device level testing. Hey! What's the two-device rule? You know that one? Okay, so the rule for hardware device testing is 2 devices. You always need a control. So you take one device, take it apart, and that way you can test, you still have one that works. But before you crack it out, read the docs. Go to the FCC database, pull out the IDs. Why? Because they're schematics. And everything that you need to know identifies the chipsets, identifies everything. And then you can know everything about the device before you even crack the case open. You also can find out, oh, there's a screw in there. Okay, I'll Dremel around it on this side, that kind of thing. Right? Reading the documentation is utmost important because the amount of stuff you can find in documentation, whether it's the FCC or provided by the vendor and their API guides, there's no sense going in blind. You can pretty much do 90% of your work just by reading the documentation before you even touch a device. Do negative testing. Assume that people didn't put stuff in properly. Assume they didn't do cert pinning. Assume that they didn't use SSL. Take a look at all the different functions. What happens if I run this twice? What happens if this thing happens? What if this happens? Go through those kind of steps and you'll see, and I'll get on that in a second as well. And the last thing is, of course, templates. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just like scripting, if you're going to do it twice, script it. So, I'm not going to go through the hardware stuff because that could take hours to do properly, but there's 2 videos from DerbyCon just a little while ago. One's from Timothy Wright. He does power control system testing. Really good guy, really good model, and he's actually the one who's actually building out the HRES process built on PTES. Another one is the IoT security one from Daryl Highland from Rapid7. 2 guys that just love to rip stuff apart. And I will be sharing the deck after as well, so for the links. Taking a look, protocols. So we talked about wireless, Bluetooth. Not going to go through it again because Kevin did a great job on the Bluetooth this morning. I'll touch on it. And of course, if Brad Hainswood's here, he'd be kicking my ass on the wireless stuff. So, but you know, you can use these kind of tools, and it's easy. So, for example, I just ran a quick Wi-Fi test, not on ours. This is a test network that I built, and just on some piece of crap laptop I had running Kali, I used the default Rocky word list, which is part of the distribution, and I found this actually isn't the password. Don't worry, but it took 4 hours. And that's my running average on it. If you have a bigger system and a bigger cluster, I've got a bunch of nodes that just sit there and crunch numbers all day. I can throw a PCAP at it, and even for a 20-digit random key, I can usually find it within a day. So, you know, people talk about security through obscurity and stuff, and for example, I've got the robot on its own separate wireless network right now. I'm pretty sure somebody's capturing my traffic right now, and they'll probably find the password, and that's fine because I'm going to change it tomorrow. Going through the Bluetooth stuff, same thing. You know, it's incredibly easy to do stuff. Pepper by actual comes completely disabled Bluetooth. Well, it was disabled. We'll get into that. Voice services, other things that you can do for testing. I was actually going to do a demo today, and I was actually going to break into Pepper, and then I was going to use Pepper to break into a Google Home. Unfortunately, I had a small issue creating the Dolphin attack file. So any of you heard of Dolphin attack already? No, okay. So Dolphin attack is ultrasonic frequencies being used for voice services. So for example, I've got a Samsung Galaxy S6 running NuGet, fully patched and everything else. But I can actually play a file running 28.4 kilohertz, and Google goes, oh, and it will accept it just like any other voice command. So the demo I actually had was for Pepper to actually say, hi Google, play some music, and it would go. Unfortunately, and the great part about this, you actually wouldn't hear anything at all. And this kind of stuff actually happens all the time. Radio broadcasters actually play this kind of stuff on TV. It's out there. So you have to be aware of these kind of things. You can't assume that just because nobody's actually talking to the robot is because it's actually very easy, because you can actually do it just like 3 feet away. You don't even have to be talking to the device. But if you don't have the device locked or anything, or if it's capable just by hitting the home button, somebody can just walk by and do it. Web and APIs. So I was talking before on how to do it. Read the API documentation. Take a look at actually when you dump it out. There's all these different things to question for negative testing. Well, what if we send multiple? It says allow multiple false. Well, what happens if we do true, right? There's a way of taking a look and trying to find a poll. Is access validated? Are IDs sequential? OAuth 2. I pulled this from a link, you can't really hear it, but there's a really good online blog article that they actually step through the ways of doing web API testing. It's really well done, well documented. One of the neat things about testing, though, is always mobile apps. Every IoT device on the planet, I think, right now, from Barbie to Echo Bee to dog locks, have an app. And I'll be honest, they all suck. I think I have something like 400 apps or something on my phone right now, just because I've been loading them all up for testing. They're bad. So what I do for testing on a lot of them, Quark, quick Android review kit, just looks for the common Android boo-boos, all the things that people typically don't do. One of my favorites, though, is Mobile Security Framework. Anybody used Mob? Wow, tough crowd. Okay. For anybody who is going to be doing any kind of web app analysis, this is step one. Literally just grab, it works on Android apps, Windows apps, iOS apps. If you have a Mac, you can run all three on the same one. If you're on Windows or Linux, then you can't do iOS because it needs Xcode, that kind of thing. But it's literally just a bunch of Python. It throws up its own web server, starts up a SQLite database. You drag and drop the app over. It runs through and does an entire static analysis. So for this one, we just throw on just a quick test Android APK. It runs through and it checks and says, okay, here's all the activities it does, here's all the APIs, it runs strings on it, pulls it out, you can search on it, so you can actually go in and type in password, and it searches through the entire system and finds out any time where they've got password equals default password or something, or you can do a search for API key and it'll actually pull out and give you all the API keys that are in there. The best part is it also gives you immediate risk ratings. So when I talk about doing reporting, yay! Download report button. Couldn't make it any simpler. All of this stuff is immediately here. The kind of stuff that you can then take to a vendor and say, here. Particular application I actually got yesterday, I actually had a vendor, I don't know what they were thinking, said, we're secure, bring it on. The red team just kind of went, are you sure? They're like, yeah, bring it. Okay. They failed miserably. Not the red team, the vendor. Like, this report was like high, critical, just because they had secured a bunch of web stuff, but their API was lacking a few places, but they hadn't done half the stuff on their mobile app development. They don't have cert pinning. They didn't have this lockdown. Their API calls were not using SSL. Like, it was just, and they're like, oh. So, things like happen. Other good thing about it, dynamic analysis. You can actually load up an emulator and throw up VMs and everything else, and they're all pre-built. Throw it up and actually start running the app in a VM and do the dynamic analysis. So you don't have to have devices. So especially for, and I've got like 6 or 7 phones, it drives me crazy because, oh, I need this OS level for this, and I need this for that, and this for that, and instant, here we go. And you can also do fuzzing. So as you find APIs and stuff within the application, you can start doing fuzzing on them and saying, find out. Everybody know what fuzzing means? Okay, good. So it's great because you can actually start doing all those little test calls. Well, what happens if we send it twice? You know, are you doing any kind of sanitization on your SQL? You know, can I get your entire database out as a, JSON file? And let's find out. And it's great too because just like everything else, it tells you all of this. So it's quick and easy for us to go. Okay. Who wants a demo? Okay. So we've already seen a few things with Pepper. And unfortunately, I have a small problem. I'm still working with the vendor on responsible disclosure. I've found a number of exploits, and unfortunately I cannot discuss them at the time. So I've had to do some changes to my thing. So unfortunately I can't do some really good things, but there are a few things I can go through. Let me tell you a little bit more about Pepper. So Pepper is a humanoid robot made by SoftBank / Aldebaran Robotics, companies in Japan and Paris actually. But now they have an office in San Francisco. Makes travel much better. Interesting thing about Pepper is she integrates into a cloud service and does visual and voice processing. So she has multiple cameras, gyroscopes, tactical sensors. There's sensors on her head, her back, her legs. There's bumpers so she doesn't drive over people's feet. There's cameras up top and bottom so she doesn't drive off the stairs, just like your Roomba. It's interesting though because she also has a tablet on the front. So she can do language processing, so you can talk to her, she'll listen to what you're saying, she'll actually be able to tell if you're happy or sad, and she'll be able to interpret everything you're saying and then send it off and give you an answer. So if you put in some AI integration onto her, and we're looking at integrating her with a number of different AI vendors. Unfortunately, I can't mention their names right now, but some are big and some are blue. Now, the interesting part about that is, so here we have all this content that, as we were saying before, gets sent up. So the first thing I checked when I was looking at her was, is all this encrypted? Yes, thank God. Because what if somebody comes up and starts saying their name and their birth date and their social insurance number or their credit card number or something? Well, all of that's going to go up. And the thing is, if Pepper thinks that you're talking to her, she's listening and waiting and reacting and hoping. So all of that stuff goes through the cloud processing. That's why you can just be standing in front of her and all of a sudden she starts talking to you because she's engaging with you. To put it lightly, it was a pain in the ass to test for a number of different reasons. However, it was an amazing learning experience because I got to be able to do a few things that I hadn't done before, and certain things that I haven't done for a long time I got to do again. One disclaimer, this is probably the only thing I've ever liked taking my work home on the weekends because my kids just love it. So, issues that I can talk about at this point. So, Note 802.1x support. That's not a surprise. Their vendor website actually even lists that. Pseudo lockdown. All of this information is actually right on their website, reading their documentation. You can find all of this stuff out without even having to crack open the robot. So companies like IOActive actually put out a report. They mentioned Pepper last year. Interestingly enough, they didn't have a robot to test either. They just ran through all the documentation and went, oh, this is bad, oh, this is bad. A lot of that's already been fixed. I said root, it's disabled, great. It's a challenge, good. Requires internet, that's annoying. So if she boots up without any kind of internet connection, she just kind of stands there and really annoying. Cloud-based content management systems, so there's another layer of complexity. There's an online store where you can actually buy apps for Pepper. And you can do very similar to the Apple Store kind of thing. So that we have a mix of not only local package management, but also cloud-based package management. So whenever we change her from this role to another kind of role, it pushes down a bunch of software that's required to fulfill that role. So there's two kinds of software. One's called Promoter, one's called Host. So if you flip between the one and the other, it says, oh, here, and now you need this, 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 and this, and I'll uninstall these ones. There is an Android tablet, and of course it has to work with the operating system. So they've got some interesting integration points on that one. It actually creates a bridge network connection. But all of it runs through an API, just a giant JavaScript API. And it's extremely well documented. In certain cases, I think maybe they kind of overdid it a few places. However, they kind of left a few pieces out. So how'd Pepper do? Well, looking back at my little test chart of here's everything that I would typically do, well, I found several critical issues. Most of it's kind of like an OS level stuff. For example, crack came out. She's using, of course, the standard BlueZ and all the other WPA supplicant files that Linux uses. She's got to get a patch. The firmware is publicly available. That makes it very easy for people to reverse engineer it. So they can take it, dump it. It's not runnable in a VM. I haven't been able to get that to work yet. But you can do strings on it. You can do hex dump. You can do debugging and everything else on it. And you can find a surprisingly amount of information. Did I find any undocumented features? Yes, yes I did. And I will show them to you actually very shortly. We found several issues related to cloud services and API. We found a couple things where it wasn't doing SSL, or in certain cases we're looking at the API keys in an interesting fashion. Even information that we're actually finding stored on the robot. So, it's like, why are you storing that file there? Just more information that should be not there. Was I able to gain elevated rights on the platform? Yes. Did I get root? Yes. Did I find a way to maintain remote persistence to the device? Absolutely. Now, that's the problem. Would have loved to show you guys that, but unfortunately, responsible disclosure. The vendor is still working on them, and actually, I found 2 more exploits on the weekend 0 day, and I haven't told them yet, so, so when they see this talk, I'll get a phone call. The interesting thing, though, is a lot of this stuff wasn't a lot of work. A lot of it was reading the documentation. A lot of it was doing the right kind of testing. Let's do some demos. Okay. Okay. So most of you have all seen Pepper, and you've seen me be doing a few things like this. So the great thing is, I was building an app for Pepper to actually be able to do a lot of this stuff. I was doing a lot of scripting in Java or Python actually. Did anybody here attend the U of A convocation just a little while ago? We had Pepper on stage. Pepper actually got stage fright, and I was actually writing all the code in Python and frantically doing it on the thing. So I started writing an app, and well, lo and behold, some guy in China actually went, hey, and he wrote me an app. It's great. First thing I did was dump it in Mob, but it actually lets me present a number of things. The interesting part about it is he's actually using undocumented service calls and exploits and didn't even realize it. So it's an interesting conversation. But the interesting thing about that is the fact that, we now have the ability of controlling the robot. I can do anything I want to her. I can make her talk. I can make her dance. I can move her around. I can make her say things. I can load files, all from my phone. Before I was doing it all from my computer. Now it's even better. Interestingly enough, only runs on iOS, not Android. So one of the things that we can do is take a look at some of the undocumented APIs. So I've logged into SSH on Pepper, standard. So by default, Pepper actually has she actually has a brother, 2 actually. One is called Neo. Neo is 18 inches tall, and he can break dance, and he's just a cute little robot. She also has another one called Romeo, and he's 6 feet tall and can carry people upstairs. Very interesting. The interesting part about the thing is Neo, the small robot, is made for educational. So they have it in universities and stuff. And it's wide open. Everyone's got root. It's got a standard username and password. They don't change it. It's root. And they can pretty much do anything they want. It's educational. Of course they're going to have that. Pepper doesn't. They locked her down. They disabled root. They put sudo on. Sudo only allows for restarts. Very, very limited capabilities. But not really. So when you take a look at some of the API documentation, you find out there's a few things in there that maybe they shouldn't have done. So for example, let's take a look at, hang on. So one of the APIs is called AL tablet service, and this is actually the Android tablet. So it's great. Take a look at this. Here's all the different service calls and tells them what to do, whether it's a string or not, true, false values. Right off the bat, though, you start noticing, if you look, it goes 162, 163, 166, 191. Oh, I'm jumping a bunch of numbers here. Well, it turns out if you go digging through the documentation, so here we got things like connect Wi-Fi, disconnect, configure Wi-Fi, all things that you can normally do from a tablet. Well, great, okay. like if we do something like get robot IP or something. Here, let's try that. Of course, I typed it in wrong, didn't I? Infotel service. Case sensitive? No. What's going on here? Okay. Anyways. There, let's go with another one. Here's one. Oh. List all the APKs on the tablet. So all of a sudden, boom, here's every single package that's on the Android tablet. What happens if we start saying, hey, look, I found this command in the API documentation on their website. Hidden. Oh, hang on. I have a whole lot more stuff now. And interestingly enough, everything that was hidden gets underscored. Makes it very easy to parse. So we start looking through there and go, oh, what's on here now? So one of the interesting things with Pepper is the fact that there's an Android tablet, but as you can see, it starts up and it has its own custom ROM and everything else, so you can't actually configure anything. Well, what happens if I now start doing there, that one. Open settings. Hey, I wonder what that one does. Oh, hey. That looks like an Android tablet setting screen. Oh, remember I said Bluetooth was disabled? Hey, let's turn it on. Okay. Oh, look, I've already connected my Xbox controller to it. So the vendor purposely disabled all of these services on the device. According to them, there's no Bluetooth connectivity on it. Well, now there is. All by reading documentation. Would have thought. And just because I know that I haven't run Bleth on her, I'm just going to turn that back off for now. But what else can we do? Well, it's an Android. Pick a device that you want to do. I can tell it to do anything I want. If you take a look through here, you can actually, where was that one? Oh, what's this? Install APK. Install system APK. Anybody know what Kango is? I could probably just call Kango or something and root the Android tablet in about 5 seconds. And yes, you can. It's been done. Not on this one, though. But instantly, you want to maintain remote persistence, you can actually tell it to call down and pull down any of the files you want, and install any packages you want, or go to YouTube and play a video. Why don't we do that? I'm even going to use the app for that. Just because I've got it preloaded in here, it'll take me forever to call in, but you can actually call in URLs on here for videos. Oh, hey, let's take a look. Not sure if any of you saw Grifter's keynote opening speech on SaintCon, but he spent the first 15 minutes talking about Trevor Forgets. Fun fact, 28 minutes and 37 seconds in, you can see me talking to the cops at 2 in the morning, explaining them to why there's an effigy for a cockroach. Okay, let's stop that then. There we go. Oh, come on. There we go. There. And now we're back to how we were. So we've gone into the device, we've gone in, we've made our own changes, put it back. There's absolutely no logs of that. Well, I'm sure we can find some debug logs for some of this stuff. The interesting part is, the robot wipes them all every time it reboots. by default. So all I need to do now is, after I put in all my persistence, is just reboot the robot. Now sudo allows us to reboot it, but you can also just use our API call and tell it to do it too. And it was, I'm not going to reboot her now because, well, it'll take forever. But so go to sleep, reset. Where was reboot? I should be just using grep on this one. So, anyways, so that's that. Here, and actually just to prove the one thing. So let's say that we had decided that we were going to use Pepper for a pivoting attack on something. Well, since I can load content to her, well, why don't we see about putting in some malicious Google Home commands? So let's take a look at that. So here, let's play local and I'm going to do it from here. There we go. Oh, I guess it helps if I don't have our volume off. Sorry. The demo gods have not been kind to me today. I already cut my hand and crashed my laptop once. So if that was played at 28.4 kilohertz, anybody's phone who was unlocked would have immediately opened up Google Music and started playing it. Not malicious, but just a really good example of how easy it is to do this. So if I were able to load up my own object files, load up the internet, I can load up anything I want. Because the robot's part of the trusted network, of course, you want it needs internet access, so that makes it easy. But if it's on a corporate network, well, you've just made it a pivot point with remote persistence. And of course, everybody loves robots. So, the other challenge with that... Come over here. They're back on mute. So that actually presents another challenge too. Because it is running Linux, but it's a custom Linux, any of this stuff, so if there's like bash shell vulnerabilities or anything else like that, you have to wait for the vendor to patch all of those. So just like the crack attack and stuff, I have to wait. Still waiting, but it's definitely on the radar now that this is something that we need to do. So, keeping an eye on the time. Any questions? Any questions? Yep. Say again? Limbs? Well, I can pretty much make her do anything I want. So, I mean, obviously, of course, like I've got full motion control on her. Beyond just driving, I have full range and capabilities of moving her head, moving any of the joints, doing anything else like that. And the software to use it is actually very easy to do. So it comes with a bunch of pre-canned stuff. But because it is just robotic animation, you can make her do anything you want. Now, it's funny, actually. Pepper, her old version actually said something, because it actually responded a lot to, whether or not humans had to fear robots and stuff, and she actually would tell you, we're here to serve humans. If we kill them, then we can't. I'm not sure why, but somebody in marketing thought that was a good idea and then promptly removed it. And that was not ATB Financial that did that. That was out of the soft vendor. So the interesting thing is, I mean, if you're integrating her with AI, it's as good as the AI. So as long as we don't use that one that a certain unnamed company did that immediately became a Nazi, we should be fine. Any other questions?
Over
Yes.
here. So how far are you looking to take Pepper, like with the types of functions she can do?
So there's a lot. So ATB put in Pepper to really understand as a proof of concept how people react to it. And of course, I've had people with slide me pieces of paper that say that they're taking over the world, and I've had people almost pee themselves because they're so excited to see the robot. So I've seen it from both extremes. It's interesting because what we thought and what people responded with were actually completely different. And that was actually really refreshing for us, because that's why we're doing the proof of concept. I mean, we had initially envisioned Pepper to be like a branch greeter. Come in, ask it questions, be able to respond back to those kind of things and say, you have US dollar conversions and that kind of stuff. And that's just right off the get-go, a bit of product marketing. She could also act like a receptionist, and so somebody comes in, they say, I'm here to see Bob, and she'll text Bob, and Bob will come out to the front. You could even program her to actually take the guest to Bob's office. As we go further and further, we're going to be adding in things like AI integration and biometric authentication. She can recognize people's faces and actually remember people and learn names. Well, if you hook her up into AI, you can do that farther. So imagine a future branch where somebody walks into a branch, she recognizes the customer as they walk in the door. She's able to see if they're happy or sad and everything else. And because she's biometrically authenticated them, can say, hey, you have $10 owing on your MasterCard. Do you want me to make that payment for you? Sure. She integrates over into our chatbot functionality in the back end and transfers you $10 to your MasterCard, paid it off. You've done all your banking, and all you've done is walk 3 feet into a bank. So that kind of stuff will help. It's interesting, however, on how people's reaction on it is, on whether or not they're taking over the jobs and that kind of thing. And the intent is not to take over people's jobs. It's to enable the easy work to get done, to enable team members to have a more meaningful conversations and relationships with customers.
And I have another one. One of us here is asking what the crash function is for.
Yes. I knew somebody was going to ask me about that one. So Pepper has a number of different standby capabilities. And so anytime she detects certain feature sets, so the crash function is used to simulate or cause those error conditions to occur. So if she starts flashing on the yellow, she'll actually start telling you error code 420, and that means her neck joint is getting hot and that kind of thing. There's certain other things that you can do that freak her right out. So she has for lack of a brake. And so I've got the brakes on right now. So when she's in like this, I can move her manually. If I try and push her around when she's got her motors engaged, she'll start freaking out and just go completely limp, just as a safety mechanism, because she don't know, maybe a small child is climbing on it, any of that kind of stuff. So using to simulate those kind of, we've had people climb on the robot. So we have to test for that and plan for that too.
I've got a question. So how do devices like this affect the GDPR and the right to be forgotten? I mean, where is that data being stored? There's obviously some local storage, and then there's some vendor proprietary cloud-based storage. So where is that currently at?
Yeah, so I can see everything that gets logged in Pepper, and it is local. Any of the stuff that goes out to the vendor, so things like the nuance programming, so any of the speech recognition, that goes through their API, and that's actually the same system that like Siri uses for her phones. Like for when you, hey Siri, it's the exact same processing center. So we're fairly comfortable with that one. But for any of the other logs, so for like the content management system and log analytics, they're in the cloud platform that's used to manage this, and so we have full access to that data as well. But and that's actually, so for anybody who couldn't hear that one, so yeah, he was just asking under GPDR on whether or not we have the capability of extruding or deleting any customer information that may be stored in the vendor cloud. My understanding is those aren't stored. Like once the text recognition is done, it's taken out of memory. So they're not logging and storing it, because if they did, there's thousands of these robots out there that they'd be generating petabytes of data a day, and they're not. So, but it is something I will look into. If you want, send me an email after with your contact information, and I'll get back to you with that, with an answer.
What are some unique countermeasures if that was a compromised endpoint? So security zoning, obviously, on the databases that it connects to,
Yep.
but like security monitoring, I guess, what are some unique challenges when testing the security on that?
Yeah, the interesting challenge on that one is the fact that we don't have root capability on it, so we can't install some of our own modules. That also makes it so you can't configure certain things like syslogs and stuff like that. Ideally, I would like to have Pepper generate SIM traffic, of course, and monitor all of that. That is one of the things that we've identified as a go forward on large scale, that would be a requirement. So.
Time for one more question, anyone? Oh, yeah. Hold on.
You had a question up here. Yes. Yeah, so any of the time, so I have it turned off right now, but like we have, it's called call to action and stuff, where we can ask, you know, if Pepper wants to send them some information and stuff that she was discussing, and they can enter their phone number for a text or their email address, and we do have a privacy disclaimer and that they can read and have to click and agree to for CASL.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was awesome. And Pepper, really appreciate it. We're just going to have a quick break, and we're back on at 2:15. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.